All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Rainmaker Family Show. It's a solo Steven episode, which is pretty rare around here. Usually Chelsea's on with me, but her and the boy are feeling a little under the weather. So they're currently cuddling under the covers. But I have an amazing guest, you guys, on the show today, Collin. Collin is an amazing guy. First of all, he's a father. He's a husband. But beyond that, he is going to help you make some more money with the words that come out of your mouth. And so welcome, Collin. I'm excited to have you on the show.
Great to be here, Stephen.
Now, Collin, I got to tell you, so we met through a mastermind, and one day I was just kind of sitting, I think I was eating lunch or something at this mastermind, and Collin just like walked over. He grabbed my pad of paper. He's like, let me show you something. And I don't know if you remember this, you drew out a tension chart for me.
Yes.
Go like, check this out. Boom, boom, boom. And you taught me this strategy in just a couple minutes. If you've been in our world, you've been through our challenge, you may have seen. We call it the family freedom model chart, right? Where we lay out the boxed mama, the hustle mama, and the stuck mama, right? And we lay these things out and we talk about the Rainmaker mama. And it's such a powerful tool because one, it helps people self-identify where they're at and be truthful about it, right? But two, it presents them as like, hey, there's another way, you know? And so many people were raising their hand and going, I'm a stuck mama, I'm a box mama, I'm the hustle mama. And it gave them language to like where they're at. Cause I think a lot of people, you know, are hesitant, I think, to sell something, right? Because I don't know, there's just this weird stigma around sales and things like that. But when you really believe in what you do, when you really are like, I know people should be in this Rainmaker thing, like a tool like that really helps people be honest and truthful where they're at, and then kind of create a bridge between there and where they want to go. So, Collin, I just want to thank you because we did just use that on our last challenge and people were going crazy over it. We actually did it on the second day of the challenge, and we did it on the last day, which is really fun to kind of go, hey, where were you? Where are you now? Are you seeing that dot move in the right direction, right? They kind of self-assessed and they're seeing it start to move towards Rainmaker Mama. And a lot of people join our program just being like, I want to be that Rainmaker Mama. I want to be that Rainmaker family. So Collin, first of all, thank you for taking time to do that. And so if you guys saw that, shout out to this guy because he taught me how to do that. And yeah, Collin, today I would love to dive into this topic of sales because if you're in business, you're listening to this podcast, most likely people are trading you money for something, right? So how can we get better at using the right words, whether it's on our listings on Amazon, whether it's in a video that we're making, or even just scripting out for someone else to make, or whether it's us going on Instagram or going on a live stream or even speaking on stage. And that's what Collin really specialized in, is helping people sell from stage. So Collin, tell people like a little bit maybe how you got into sales, because I think I've heard a little bit of your journey, but like, what was the thing that kind of like drew you to sales? What did you think about it from the beginning? Were you always a natural, or what was this journey looking like?
Yeah, well, thanks for the intro, mate. And glad that framework is working well. That particular framework that you're talking about is one of 9 strategies that I teach, which are called infusion selling. And so my philosophy of sales has developed over the years. But originally, you know, I definitely would never have considered myself a salesperson or anything like that. And probably a lot of your listeners would not want to put themselves in the salesperson box, right? There's usually like a lot of resistance around, I don't want to be a salesperson. I don't want to be known as like being pushy or salesy. And what you're describing there, first of all, it warms my heart because it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, which is it sells what you help people with without feeling like you're selling. And so what I'm completely obsessed with is tools and strategies, which is what I call infusion selling strategies, tools and strategies that people can use, whether they're selling physical products, Amazon products, doesn't matter. I teach a lot of coaches and speakers. They can use these tools to communicate with their audience and actually sell their offer without them feeling like they're selling per se. Does it feel like that when you're using that particular model?
No, it doesn't. And I mean, I was on your website. I saw, I mean, you worked with Amy Porterfield and she said the same thing, right? It was like, I love working with Collin because I don't love selling. Like it does. I don't like, that's not her brand. Like if you guys know Amy, you know, like she sells, she makes great money, right? But like, she's not, when you think of Amy, you don't think, oh, hardcore sales, right? But it's just like this natural, like, how could you integrate this in a really natural way that works, first of all, like gets you results, but also feels in a way that like easy and natural, you know, it feels like this is true to my character. Right. And so, yeah, I would love to dive into that, Collin, like some of these strategies that whether you're selling a product on Amazon, whether you have an e-course, whether you're in any, like even a service-based business, like Chelsea, was doing photography, like selling packages, selling, prints, like anything this could really be applied to. So I don't know, where do you want to start, Colin? Because I know there's so many places we could go.
Well, I would love to talk about like the topic of story. So, because story is one of the infusion selling strategies, and I think it's probably the best place for people to start. The one that I share with you is a bit more advanced. So I think that we should start at the foundational story. Now, when I say it's the start, don't consider it being less powerful, because I actually think your signature story, or the way, what I call your conversion story, is actually the most powerful tool that you have to sell your products. And so if you think about it like this, if I trust you've been to Disneyland, right? It's down the road from me. I'm based in Newport Beach, California, right? The tickets at Disneyland, compared to some of the tickets like maybe Knott's Berry Farm or Six Flags or something like that, they're a little bit more expensive, right?
Yeah, of course, right?
They're usually like 3 times the price of saying. So the reason that Disney can sell a more expensive ticket, even though it's still a theme park, yes, they have, various rides, etc. The reason they can sell their tickets at a higher price is because of the story that drives people to it. It's the magical story of the mouse and the characters that drives people's desire to want to pay more money, and they consider it to be more valuable. And so your story, when you can craft the right story around your product moves from being a commodity to a desired, unique experience. And so we were literally just joking the other, like just on the podcast before in the intro, whether you play it or not, but we'll revise it, which was the idea of, I recently purchased some really expensive sparkling water. I'll say
Yes.
water, right? So it's water. I forget the R with my Australian accent. So I purchased some really expensive sparkling water. And the reason why I purchased it was from an ad. And it was this young girl, very authentic. And she basically revealed in a visual way the story of her product and the journey that she went on, from struggle all the way through to victory. And I saw that product because I've seen a lot of sparkling water advertising. That was the first one I clicked on and just bought right away. And so at the core of it, when you can get the right story to wrap around your product, your product moves from a commodity to a desirable experience for people. It's a unique, desirable experience.
Wow. That's so powerful. Cause like we were even talking, like I've seen the same ad, and that's pretty crazy that this gal, we don't know her, we have both seen her face multiple times on Facebook. We both know the person behind the brand, And I think a lot of times, like we do a lot of e-commerce, physical products, and a lot of people come into our world because they don't want to put their face on the brand. They don't want to be on Instagram. They don't want to do that thing. And that's totally okay. There can still be a story around the product, but how much more powerful is, like when I buy LaCroix or I buy a bubbly, I don't think of a person. I'm like, just like, oh, it's grapefruit or it's lemon, like that's really it. And like, maybe it's more carbonated, or it's like, this one tastes like, trash. And this one, I don't know, like what is, so it's like all about the, like kind of the thing. Right. But for this one, I mean, it sells for more. I've seen it in the store. It sells for quite a bit more than like, a box of LaCroix or something. Right. But when you see the can, now you think of the person. Right. And I feel like she must be targeting entrepreneurs or something. Cause it's like, I feel like have that draw, like, oh, the hustle, like she went through the ups and the downs and figured this thing out, had this dream. And now you're rooting for a deeper thing. It kind of takes you from a consumer to like a super fan, like almost, I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but it's almost like it feels like you're part of something, like
you just hit the nail on the head. So when you tell your story right, which is what I call a conversion story, you realize that the story you're telling, which is your story, has nothing to do with you. And so one of the big revelations that people have to have if they want to get good at elevating the price of their product through their story is when they think about crafting their story, as they're telling it, they have to actually consider, how do I share this in a way that resonates with the audience and answers the question of, this person who's telling the story is like me? And so there's actually 3 questions that you have to answer to effectively tell a story that sells a product. And the first question is, are you like me? So when you're telling your story, the audience has to be listening and going, in some way, they're thinking, this person's kind of like me. Like they're in the same sort of situation as me. The second question you have to answer is, can you lead me? Now, I teach a lot of coaches and speakers and trainers, so we sell a lot of info products. But if you think about a physical product, the question of can you lead me is more, have you shown through your product, through your experience, through your journey, that the product can see the result that I'm desiring?
Cool. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? So that's the second question, is can you lead me? And the third question is there a path that I can follow? Now, that question is simply like, yes, there is. It's called the product.
Yeah, add to cart.
Right? Add to cart. A lot of the times, if I'm going deeper on it, it's what we call the core premise. And the core premise, and I think when if you get more advanced in marketing and go deeper in it, and I'm sure you're familiar with the idea of a core premise, which is essentially is like the one idea that the audience has to believe in order to say yes to the product.
And I've seen people do this in really creative ways in the e-commerce world. I don't know if you have any e-commerce examples. I mean, there's some major brands that have done this, I feel like, really well, put like some sort of story on it. And sometimes it's something simple. Sometimes like Tom's, right? It's like, this shoe gives back. Like, I mean, it's like, that's kind of the heart of the thing. And that really was, I feel like when they did it, it was kind of like, I mean, people were doing it, but they really like branded off that thing. And it kind of made it this stand of like, people felt this sense of pride wearing these shoes that are like basically socks, like it's not this like really fancy shoe, but it cost as much of a fancy shoe at the time. Right. And, but there was like this kind of like, oh, there's something deeper here. Like wearing this actually said something about me, as opposed to like, like it was like people that bought the Toms, like it actually said something about them. Right. And like, they kind of had this identity of like, I believe that core thing, right? Of like giving back, and like, even so much so that I'll pay $50 for a pair of like sock shoes, so that I can, like wear these things. Right. So man, it's so powerful. So I would, if you're listening to this show, like I would just take a second. If you have to pause this, that's fine. But think through this. Like, are you like me? Can you lead me? Is there a path that I can follow? I mean, even like in the photos you're using around the product, like when we were in the wedding world, we really learned this. Like what we had on our website was what we attracted. So like we were at these weddings and we'd be like, everyone's like, I want a jumping photo of my my bridal party. And we're like, no, like why are all these jumping photos? Like we hate these, And so like we realized it was on our website. Like we had a jumping photo on there. We took that off. All of a sudden people started asking for the jumping photo, And so like we started showing higher end weddings, started showing, luxury brides. And then guess what we started to attract, So what are you showing? What are you even saying? What are you showing? It's going to attract that right person. Like what is the story you're telling through the words, the branding, the imagery, all those things. And so, man, what would you say to someone who's like, oh, I have no story, like I have no story. Like there's no, like I'm just selling a door hinge on Amazon. Like there's no story, like, because I think that's a trap people can fall into.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've never found someone who didn't have a story. In fact, those people who say they've got no story, we could probably sit down with them for an hour and pull out about 25 stories that we could share. Usually when it comes to creating a conversion story, which is the story you tell to sell your product without selling your product, there's usually only like between 1 to 3 stories. And so what tends to happen is, the easiest way to think about it is if you have a product, and this is going to be stronger for some people than others, depending on their experience of the product they're selling. But I think it can be applied to most situations. The stronger the experience of the transformation that you've had from the product you sell, the stronger the story is going to be. So, for example, if you are, if you're selling some sort of, mechanism or something that has created, I even think about like cupcake holders, right? Like you help people sell cupcake trays or holders. And you could think about a story or an experience of where you put in the time and the effort to to make the cupcakes. The friends came around, and maybe the fear you had before that, the people coming over. So you want to be telling parts of the story where people really resonate with. They're like, oh my gosh, I feel that anxiety too. I feel that fear before I hold the party, I host the party. And then your journey of not just making a cupcake, but it's more than that. It's putting love into the experience that you've got. And then even more than that, it's about building beautiful connections and resonance with people, with the people that you love, and sharing fun, shareable moments. And so, like, you can always usually find something, even like, a cupcake holder, or I don't even know what they're called, like something like that is such a menial small thing, but you can always find some sort of meaning behind the thing. And that's the biggest thing that people need to realize, is that to tell a great story, you have to discover what's the meaning behind the physical experience. And so when you reveal the meaning, or you reveal the emotion that could bring up from the difficulty before it, the experience you had with it, and then the result from it, if you can bring up the emotion and the meaning from it, all of a sudden that experience comes from being a specific experience you had to a universal experience that everyone can have.
That's so powerful. I'm reminded of I did a coaching session with someone recently, and I was kind of just reviewing this is an Amazon product, right? And what we do, Colin, like, we pretty much launch products based on what people want on Amazon. So sometimes they are totally random. They're just based on, like, someone was searching for this thing and we saw it in our software. We went after that thing. So sometimes, like, if you're listening to the show and you're in our world, like, you may feel like, I have no story, but there is. And I was talking to someone recently, and he was selling a tree swing strap. Okay. Tree swing strap, like, on the surface, like, his is not much different from the other ones out there. It's just a different color. But I was like, hey, like, what's your experience with this thing? How'd you get into it? He found it through the software and all these things, but he told me a story in there. And he was like, you know what? When I had my daughter, we were swinging on the tree, and I just bought kind of a cheap strap off Amazon, and it broke, and I was like, that story needs to be on the page.
Dude,
like,
that's a good story.
You need to put, like, a dad approved, like, stamp, like, this is a dad business,
Boom.
And I was like, that's the thing. Cause, like, it's not about the strap. It's about that, like, we call this a scratch your own itch story, right? Where it's like, you had a problem, and so you created the solution, right? And so, like, he's like, dad approved stamps all over this thing, like, and then here's the story, like, this needs to be in the insert, it needs to be on the Amazon listing, it needs to be everywhere, because it's not about a product, it's about, like, like the father's love, like, like, do you love your kids? If so, buy this one for $2 more than that cheap one, like, you know what I mean? So, like, it puts so much power on it. And now it's about fatherhood, it's about connection, it's about safety, and for the mom who's buying that product on Amazon, because, it's just like, it's more of a female, it's just, there's more women buying on Amazon than men, to be honest, for that mom to see that dad approved stamp on there, it's just like, oh, like, I feel good about this one,
And you've hit on something great there, because if you can go, what's this about? Which is what you identified. It's about love. It's about safety. It's about certainty. And then you can craft a story around that emotion and link it to the product. Then all of a sudden the story becomes incredibly
wow,
powerful.
that's so powerful. That's a really cool hack to, like, kind of find the story within. Because, like, you might not even have the swinging story, but if he's like, hey, this product's about safety, there could be a story in his life about when he felt unsafe, or his kid felt unsafe, and he's like, now I'm on a mission to create products that help kids have fun while parents know they're safe. And now he has a through line that he can launch multiple products and still have that same story selling all the products. And so that's really powerful.
That's the example of the core premise, which
that's
is
huge.
That when you find that core idea of going, what's the through line? That's what I usually call it. I call it the red ribbon. It's the through line that runs through the product of that belief or that emotion that the person is looking to experience. And you can tell stories even out of context. You can tell stories and link the meaning and transfer it to the meaning of that product.
Wow, that's powerful. Man, I'm like fired up right now. I'm like, this is so fun. I love this. Now, Colin, I know you really have kind of dove into a lot of stuff with psychology, NLP, like the power of words, the type of words you're using. are there any kind of like, hacks around telling your story of like the types of words you use to really help people kind of like those three things, like feel like they're like you, feel like you can lead them, feel like this is going to get their results, like, or any mistakes you see people make in their language patterns, like the words they're using around the products they're selling?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's like 5 key things that we tend to focus on with story, but I'll take you through like 1 or 2 of them at the moment. So, one of them is using the senses. So, when we talk about NLP or neuro linguistic programming, which is really the study of language and its effect on the psychology and physicality of humans, when you tell a story that brushes over what you saw, what you felt, what you heard, it stops the audience leaning into your story. So, for example, I could say like this: I could say, I was at the beach the other day and we had a whole bunch of fun. Or I could say, I was standing on the beach looking over the waves as they came crashing in, and I could feel the warm sand, the warm yellow sand underneath my feet. And I remember in my stomach feeling so excited to start playing this game with my daughter because I'd been planning this for so long. And so as soon as I get into what I saw, what I felt, what I heard, what I told myself, all that sort of stuff, that brings the audience into the story. And so a lot of the times the reason why people don't do that is because they think their stories are boring. And they think their stories are boring. Sorry, their stories are boring because they just aren't spending enough time talking about some of the more details. So it's called VAK, which is visual auditory kinesthetic.
Okay. Wow.
And so when you spend some time on that, because that's how people experience the world. And what happens, and this kind of links to one of the second points, what happens is when you spend some time in the visual auditory kinesthetic, and you rather than kind of tell a story of, you might say something like, oh, I was 8 years old and I grew up in Tennessee, and then we moved to California, and then we moved to, and you kind of like brush over stuff. No, you got to start in a moment. So as an 8-year-old child, I was sitting there with my brown shorts and my little blue singlet on, looking at this dog running at me. I was in Tennessee at the time, and it's like you start in this moment of time, and all of a sudden the audience moves from kind of just listening to going, they just go and they just go into your story and they experience it. Could you feel that as I started?
That's so cool. Yeah, no, that's so amazing. Because I've noticed people do that, and like you can tell when someone like they I don't know, they're trained, they've worked with someone like you, because they'll do that. They'll start at the moment, and like me and Chelsea, again, I come back to the wedding industry because like the groomsmen speech, it's like always terrible. But like there was a couple groomsmen that I still remember their speech because they would do that instead of going, hey guys, you might not know me. Like, if you don't know me, like, maybe, and like, they just start with this awkward, like kind of introduction. Like that is like the classic. Hey, if you don't know me, like that was the like, we just like, all right, this is, it's just going to be that type of speech. But then every once in a while, there'd be like a speech where they start with the moment, they go into the VAK, the visual auditory kinesthetic. So talking about what they see, they're like, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was sitting on the couch, and it's just like you're in, it's like, and so that's so powerful. And I love this idea. And me and Chelsea have been trying to get better at this. Like, so like we have really, like in the online world right now, there are so many people competing for your customers' attention, And so even with Instagram lives or Instagram stories, things like that, where you're just like, we used to just start all of our stories with like, hey guys, what's up? Like it's like wasted time. It's like sometimes you do have to be like that, but when you can go start right in the moment, like my doorbell just rang and you would never believe who showed up. It's just like, oh my gosh, like I gotta know. And so in a world where people have this like 5 second and they're gonna scroll attention, how do you get their attention? How do you interrupt the pattern, right, of their day to go, hey, lean into this story because what you're about to hear is gonna move you, right? That's so powerful. VAK, start in the moment. Man, I love these tips.
And it's actually a nice way to start. Like even the order of that is quite good in terms of VAK. So what you saw, what you told yourself or what you heard, and then what you felt. That's actually called a charisma pattern. And it's, if you can start like that. So for example, I was standing on the beach looking over the waves, and they were coming in, and I could see the water flying off the back of them as the wind was blowing over. And I remember telling myself this was a moment that I'd been planning for quite some time, but there was a feeling that came over me in that moment where, and so that's the VAK. So what I told myself, which is auditory, because you can go internal or you can go external, auditory, and then kinesthetic, what I felt, or you could describe the physical experience on the external as
That's
well.
so powerful. I'm going to definitely, that's going on a post-it now, because I like, we have a, thing, teleprompter here. We could like look at, the people as we're talking to them. I'll replace mine. This one currently says, say you instead of you guys. Speak to one person. Because like, right, like that's another strategy, right? Don't hey you guys, like you're more broad. Speaking to one person, like that's my post-it note I have right now I'm working on, is just speaking to one person. It makes it more powerful. You guys can all do that on your copy, but I'm gonna write this on too. VAK, and start in the moment. That's powerful.
Start in the moment. Yeah, that's the strategy. Is don't say it was about 8 years ago, I was, this old. No. Like start in a specific moment. Where were you sitting? What were you wearing? Who were you talking to? How are you feeling? When you do that, all of a sudden people, they enter your story, because remember, like we said at the start, your story is designed to be their story. And when you do that well, it actually transfers the emotion, the desire to want to use the products that you sell without needing to even sell it. Because it just naturally, you tell the story and then it naturally leads in. And then I had this revelation that when I started using this particular product, like I just couldn't believe like the result that I got. And so people will buy because of the motivation of the story, because they feel like they've been on that journey as well. They just haven't got to the end yet, but your product fulfills that end.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. That's so cool. Okay, Collin, I got one more question I feel like we should lean into. People are still feeling like, I feel like if you're listening this far, I almost said you guys, if you're listening this far, you're probably like, I could do this. Okay. I could do this, but maybe there is still some reservation around selling, right? That kind of idea of like, oh, I don't want to be a salesperson. What do you say to someone who's having that kind of like mental block of like selling, or I could never, they're just using this language of, oh, keep it away,
Yeah. I mean, I love talking about and helping people move past that desire to sell, or the resistance to sell. I think that you need to consider the thing that you sell as a transformational vehicle for people to get a result that they want. And so, you might say, oh yeah, but how is a door hinge a transformational vehicle? Well, first of all, it might, it might save them a lot of time. It might, create a sacred space for them in their room, like all that sort of stuff. But really, when it comes down to it, you want to think about it as, until someone makes a transaction, they aren't really committed to the outcome that they want. And so the transaction, or the money that they spend with you for your product is really just one of the currencies that motivates them to get the result that they're trying to get. And your product facilitates a faster, more efficient way of getting the result that they want than doing it alone. And so the transaction is simply like, it's a hoop that they jump over consciously, and it actually lights a fire of motivation to get the result that they want. Because if they got it for free, they would be a lot less likely to get the result that they want to get through the product that you've got. Does that make sense? Like if you get a bag of swag and you get it for free, it's kind of like most of my swag just ends up in the bin, to be honest. But if I paid for something, it's probably not going to end up in the trash. I'm going to want to use it because there's a lot more motivation behind it. And so think about it like this, is that selling is really just creating a space where people can get more committed to the outcome that they want, not what you want. They want the outcome. So it's not about convincing them that they want it, because it's usually a lot easier to sell to someone who wants an outcome, right? So they're already looking for that thing, especially that happens on Amazon a lot. They're looking for that specific result. They want the outcome. And so selling is really just helping them to more efficiently facilitate that outcome. And the money is just a motivating factor for them, increasing the likelihood of them getting a result.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Collin, well, I feel like there's so many nuggets today. I took notes. I was trying to take notes while still looking at you and stuff. But man, I got some fun stuff I definitely am chewing on. And I hope you listen to this episode are doing the same. Whether you're selling, you're in the coaching business, whether you're selling a physical product, whether you're in the service-based business, like story is one of those things that can truly take your business to the next level. Attaching a powerful story to your products, your services, having that through line. It's the difference between someone who's just a consumer. They're just like, this is just a commodity, to someone who's a raving fan, someone who's like, I'll buy every product this business puts out because I believe in that story, because it's not just their story, it's my story. So Collin, for people that want to go deeper on this like story topic, this like, creating a story, crafting a story around their brand, like what would you recommend? Like, where can they find you online? Where can they connect with you? I know we're going to have some listeners that are going to want to dig into this.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's such an exciting topic. So first of all, if you're on Instagram, definitely connect with me on Instagram. I'm at Collin Boyd, COLINBOYD. I'm pretty active on Instagram. And for those of you who really resonated with the content today and you feel that desire of wanting to create that story and multiple stories that would sell your programs and move them from commodities to unique transformational experiences that people are buying, then you should go and check out what I call the conversion story formula. So the conversion story formula is my step-by-step process for actually doing that specific thing. And this is my promise, is that you would have your conversion story, the story you use to sell your products, in 48 hours. That's my goal. Within 48 hours, you're going to be sharing online, like in your emails, on your product pages, on all that sort of stuff, the story that's going to sell your thing. And so I know for me, like I recently kind of built out this conversion story formula and I finished it and I reflected on it and I was like, damn, this thing is really good. And when you impress yourself, you know it's actually really good. So
that's awesome.
So yeah, I know you got a link for people who want to just check it out. And I think it will truly change your life in terms of that selling process and selling journey.
Amazing. Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes. It's going to be rainmakerchallenges.com/story. Okay, rainmakerchallenges.com/story. Go grab that. If you're feeling the draw to this thing, you're like, I know this could be I believe this is, it needs to happen in every business. But if you're feeling like now is the right time to lean this thing, 48 hours from now, you could be empowered with this to be telling your story. So go get that, rainmakerchallenges.com/story. Collin, thank you so much for being on. This is amazing. I love any chance I get to connect with you because I leave inspired, empowered, and I know these things are going to bring our business more income, more impact, and more reach. So thank you so much, Collin, for being on the Rainmaker Family Show.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, David.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rainmaker Family Show. Hey, if you are not a part of our Rainmaker Mastermind, we have a new opportunity for you to book a one-on-one strategy call with one of our Rainmaker coaches.
If you want to get a call with them, see if it's a good fit for you to work with us to build a business that allows you to have time freedom and financial freedom, you can get that call at makeitrainmama.com/podcast. That's makeitrainmama, MOMMA.com/podcast.